Good.
Jeff fills a lot of void.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Upper Darby Township Planning Commission meeting for September 12th, 2022, calling us to order at about 7:04 tonight. We can do a visual roll call. We're all in attendance except Jeff, who had let us know earlier he would not be here. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from last month? Any corrections necessary, or is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we still are able to speed right through item 4 with no communications and bills at this point. And so we have one review on the list tonight, and that is the proposed Starbucks at 1884 South State Street. So if the developers would like to come forth and present their plans.
Good evening, everyone. Amy Farrell with Kaplan Stewart. We're the attorneys for the applicants here. The applicant is the property owner for this property. This is the property I think you're all quite familiar with. It's the sort of last component of the Bond Shopping Center that has not been redeveloped. It's the corner parcel, former gas station, which will be removed in its entirety. Site will be completely scraped and cleaned up, and the proposal is for a Starbucks with a drive-through of just under 2,500 square foot Starbucks footprint with an associated drive-through. The site is a little quirky. It is technically part of the larger parcel, the strip center behind it, or adjacent to it, depending on how you're looking at the plan. But as I'm sure you know, and as you can see on the plans, it really does sort of function as its own individual unit within that site because of some grade changes in that area there. We do have land development review letters from the township's traffic consultant and the township engineer. And our engineer, Wayne Kiefer, has been in discussion with township consultants with respect to those review letters. We've already been through the zoning approval process and received the zoning necessary to allow this use in this configuration. So I'm going to ask Wayne to just sort of walk you through generally the overall proposal, discuss the waivers briefly. There are 4 waivers associated with the proposal, all I think fairly routine and relatively standard for projects of this type. And then we certainly can answer any other questions that you might have.
I think Amy did a pretty good summary of the project. Again, it is just the portion of the 1.8 acre parcel. Excuse me, all the existing, choked up about this, all the existing gas station improvements will be removed. The tanks have already been removed on the site. Starbucks will be completely redeveloped as a new pad site there. We have stacking for 10 vehicles. There's 22 parking spaces associated just with the Starbucks. And as Amy said, there are some significant grade changes to the remainder of that property. It's about 4.5 feet, which is why this is kind of separated on its own, and the interconnections are an issue. We did review the review letters, and essentially everything's a will comply except for the couple things that we have tonight. There are 3 existing nonconformities that I think have been verified that there are existing nonconformities and will continue. That has to do with the adjoining the remainder of the property, landscaping for the entire property, and that the front corner of the parcel is in the flood zone. The building will be constructed outside of the flood zone, but the front corner of the parking, as everyone probably knows, is in the flood zone. We are requesting 4 waivers from the SALDO. The first would be to approve the project as a preliminary final, not as a separate approvals. Next would be the stacking lane distance, the exit drive onto Lansdowne Avenue. The 3rd vehicle stack will block part of a existing or a proposed parking space. That is a right turn movement only, so hopefully the stacking is minimal at that intersection. Third is to allow for a curb radius of less than 5 foot. That is only on the long, thin island along the drive-through, but it's not 10 feet wide and can't be provided there. But there will be no vehicle turns that would impact. And the last one is a waiver of the requirement to infiltrate groundwater, and that's based on the old use of the site and the DEP cleanup policies and requirements. I'm happy to answer any questions, go through the letters as you see fit.
Sorry. Is this on? Is this on? Can you, forgive me, can you explain what stacking is?
So it's required that that any more than 3 vehicles stopped here to turn out onto Lansdowne don't block the parking area. That third car parked right here waiting to leave would partially block this parking space.
I see, okay.
Wait, you want to describe the operation on the site, how its circulation is going?
Right. The driveway here on Lansdowne would be a right-in, right-out only. So vehicles coming down Lansdowne can turn in and either proceed directly to the drive-through or come into the site to park. Any parked cars will come out onto Lansdowne and can turn right only. Obviously, it's a divided road. Anyone coming through the drive-through is going to be forced to come back out to Lansdowne. But if they're going on State Road, they could obviously come out here and make a right and go back down State or make the left at the light. The only traffic that would be making a left from State would be parked cars that come out here and make a left. But I think Lansdowne would probably be a better alternative once they've been there.
What about outdoor seat? Is there outdoor dining?
Yes, this is an outdoor seating area. There will be tables. There's a railing that will go around this area to avoid people stepping off the curb directly into the drive-through lane. There are 2 bike racks provided, 1 handicap spot, and just off the screen, there's an interconnection to the sidewalk along Lansdowne back through the site with a crosswalk and the striped area to the entrance.
What's the plan what's the loading plan? I don't s-
That is something we need, I'm waiting for some feedback from Starbucks. Their typical site does not have a designated loading zone, but we're going to work with them and the township consultants to get a loading area that fits what they need and what the township wants to see. My thought right now, after speaking with Michael, is we'll probably take the dumpster and rotate it this way and do a loading area alongside the drive-through.
So just as a bit of a follow-up, but the Starbucks operationally tends to do their loading and their deliveries outside of their customer windows for the most part. So they have a pretty good sense of when their peak times are, and they work very hard to stay out of those peak times in terms of loading, because they obviously know that's going to impact drivers not just in the drive-through, but in the parking lot in general. So between that and then being able to get some detail from them, further detail on what amount of space they really would realistically need, we do have some space on there to make those modifications, make sure there's a loading area if that's required.
What are the hours?
I don't know their general hours of operation relative to this site, but they're fairly standard hours. They're pretty early in the morning until they're open in the evenings, but those are not peak hours for them. Their busiest times are obviously in the morning as folks are queuing up to head to work. So they tend to deliver outside of those peak time periods.
The outside seating's how many and the inside seating's how many?
I don't have exact seating numbers. I believe there's going to be 4 small tables.
Okay. And the inside?
With only part of the 2,400 square feet, you're not getting many occupants in there in a seating area. I'm sorry, I don't have the floor plan in front with us tonight.
Oh, okay.
We did receive relief from the zoning hearing board for the outdoor dining. That's a requirement in this district to have variance relief related to that. So we did receive that relief, and we went through the interior, exterior seating and the associated parking as part of that variance request.
Yeah, I know you had that. I'm just curious to know how many you have. So it's 4 outside, but we don't know, like, what would you guess the inside's going to be?
you're not seating more than 20 to 25 people.
Oh, okay. Which is what they have next door right now. They have less than that.
Okay. Yeah, that store's probably a little smaller if it's just
A
being
lot
the
smaller.
end cap.
It's a lot smaller. And tell me about the water. You said the filtration water.
Stormwater. So there's a requirement in the township ordinance from DEP that you infiltrate a certain portion of the stormwater runoff. With the previous use of the site, with the tanks in there, part of the DEP closure requirements are that those soils remain covered at all times. And the infiltration and those requirements are going to conflict at some point. So we're asking for a waiver of the infiltration. And honestly, being in the floodplain, I don't know that we're going to get much infiltration there anyway.
Okay.
Is that? You flip to sheet 1 or 2. So this line here is the existing floodplain line. So the front corner is in the floodplain, and generally, those areas don't infiltrate well.
So this would be maybe more of an operational question, but do we have a sense, or do you have a sense of sort of the expected amount or of vehicles going through the drive-through in a given window? I'm asking in relation to the stacking lane, because in my head, when I think of drive-throughs, I generally think of, more fast food restaurants that's, drinks, food, whatever. Starbucks, in my experience, is generally more so beverages. And so I imagine they go through the drive-through quicker as a layperson. So 3 cars seems low, but maybe I'm just ignorant of like how quickly those cars.
Different stacking. The 3 cars is leaving the site. In the
Right.
drive-through lane, we have space for 10 vehicles to stack.
Okay.
And I forget if it was the township traffic engineer or the PennDOT is asking for a queuing analysis. Basically, the same question you just asked, to show that the time that each vehicle spends in the window, they won't back up onto the road.
That's exactly what I was wondering, because I was just thinking, coming out onto that street, if that's a red light at the intersection, if you're making a right onto that, I could,
You're going to be blocked at the red light.
right, you're going to, exactly.
But the one thing we are doing that will hopefully help out there is there's 4 existing driveways to the property, 2 on each street, and we're eliminating the 2 closest to the intersection. We push people back at least a few car lanes.
Just some of the modifications, some of the modifications that we talked about in the review letter have to deal with stacking and the loading zone as well, right? So modifying that extra wide sidewalk potentially on the right side of the building where the drive-through lane is now, widening that out to get 2 lanes, 1 bypass, 1 actual drive-through lane itself, which will allow cars to not back up into the roadway, but also allow for a loading zone. And that was what we worked on that. If you're looking at the eastern side of the site where the drive-through lane is now, you can see we're talking about modifying that a little bit so that we have that circulation and that the site can operate a little bit more efficiently. And also not allow for any kind of traffic jams on site. Because we know Starbucks they're high turnover and they get a lot of stacking. 10 stacking on a Starbucks at peak hour is not really, I mean, it's a lot, but it's not,
It's not excessive.
Not
by any
unusual.
stretch.
but you could have 15, 20 cars waiting at Starbucks sometimes, so.
The one thing you don't really see on this plan, this is the driveway back to the high school. I think they use it for maintenance. This driveway is about 15 feet higher than our site. There's a pretty sheer drop off there. There are rock outcroppings, so the initial concept was to try to avoid blasting into that rock or ripping into that rock for improvements. But in discussing, I think we have some room to work out an arrangement that'll work for everybody.
That whole area gets so much pedestrian traffic. And I've seen people do cartwheels and handstands trying to get across the street. How does this How does this mitigate that?
Of crossing State Road,
Yeah. Yeah, especially the high school traffic too. And folks coming from the Bond, from like the Acme who have already parked,
right?
don't want to, try and find parking across the street, will try to navigate, what is it, 4 lanes of
Right.
traffic?
And
Well, they can't affect.
there's not much on our slate that it will impact that one way or the other. The thing that should help, again, is eliminating those 2 closest driveways. So you take out the vehicle pedestrian conflicts right at the intersection.
Okay.
The rest of it is really a timing matter for that signal. And that, in our initial talk with PennDOT, they haven't brought up signal timing with this. They have not.
Is there a what is it? I forget what it's called, but it's when all of the lights are red at the same time.
Full pedestrian.
Full pedestrian, yeah, okay.
I don't think there is a full pedestrian walk there.
I don't think so either.
If there is, it's recent, because it wasn't when I was living on that.
Yeah, I don't think there is.
I haven't seen that.
Would that be something,
Kids are coming out of school, you have all the.
exactly, when everybody just stops, when all cars stop?
And that's not something that's something that PennDOT would have to require, since that's a state intersection there. It's not something that we could, or even that the township could require. We can certainly have that conversation with PennDOT and let them know that's a township concern, and they might take that into account. But I think to Wayne's point, it's all, PennDOT's looking at not just this intersection when they're doing these analyses. They're looking at the timing of lights along both of those roadways in multiple directions. So often what you and I might agree makes the most sense, unfortunately, isn't what PennDOT ultimately decides makes the most sense. But I think that to Wayne's point, eliminating those 2 closest driveways that are there currently makes a huge difference in terms of the way that the vehicle traffic gets channelized through the site, so that we're pulling the cars as far away from that corner as we can, which definitely helps with the pedestrian connectivity. There is, with both of these driveways, there will be throat improvements at the new driveways that are going in. So there's pedestrian crossings that are shown there, which helps as, particularly as kids are crossing those
And they
entry
are.
driveways. And, I'm sure Starbucks hopes into the site to get their lattes, but those improvements all happen as part of this project as well, so that there's, I think, significantly more pedestrian-friendly access when we're done than there is currently.
Okay.
And the township traffic engineer did request that we provide a concrete apron at our new driveways, which are more pedestrian friendly. They look like a walkway rather than what you have out there now, where you definitely look like you're crossing a driveway. I think that should help with drivers visualizing that there are pedestrians there.
And certainly I can say with respect to experience with Starbucks in general, with these types of sites, I mean, they're always willing to increase signage, particularly directional signage. So if there is a concern, as the traffic engineer's reviewing it, and they want some, pedestrian warning signage as Starbucks customers are leaving the site, they have that type of signage that they can add, so that, as somebody is leaving the drive-through and getting ready to turn out onto Lansdowne, there's signage there reminding them that there are pedestrians that, that may be crossing there, and that they should be paying attention for that.
Yeah,
So
because
that's
the
certainly
peak
something that could
hours,
be added.
the peak hours are the peak hours for the schools too. And I don't know if you've been in that area when the schools are loading and unloading. It's madness.
I was out there tonight around 5:30 and was shocked at how many people were still coming from the high school.
Yeah,
It's probably sports getting over or something, but there were a lot of people walking
Yeah.
down that road at that time, and they were definitely high school students.
but now with, was it DCC coming?
The other end of the street.
Yeah, that's another whole group of folks that will make the peak time, I would imagine, make the peak time in the evening, because those are evening classes.
I'm hoping for another coffee shop at that end.
Okay.
So I have a question about
Okay.
the landscape. You said there's nonconformity. What landscaping is, I don't know if I
There's a
saw it.
requirement in the ordinance that 5% of parking areas be landscaped.
If the
for s-
parking
For
area is
parking
50 or
areas
more.
over 50 cars. So the existing portion of the site, we're not touching the parking area or landscaping up there. But our portion, we will meet all the landscape requirements for our portion of the property, our portion, the developed portion of the property.
There's nothing there now.
There's nothing.
Correct.
There will be a lot more than nothing
Well,
when we get done.
there was like some little dirt things that are just,
Right.
Yeah, I forget the exact number I came up with. I think we have 35 trees and shrubs that are required by ordinance, and we will provide those.
and you should look at what they planted over at the Bond Shopping Center. They did, I don't know what they are, rose bushes and crepe myrtles. It looks great, like 5 months a year. So, I mean, great. It looks, all year it looks great. but
Okay.
Those two work really well for some reason. Whatever they have, maybe you can just go get some clippings now and start rooting them for free.
Oh, Lord.
It's the rest of the Senate.
Well, and the other thing too is as you get shrubbery and trees and whatever, that they don't block the view of traffic.
I don't think it will.
They will,
Vehicle
everything,
traffic.
we have a 75-foot site triangle on here that's required. There will be no landscaping within there. And then we're required to provide site distance from both driveways, and that'll be provided. The other thing for pedestrians that we will do is push the sidewalk back to avoid the 2 utility poles that are growing in the middle of the sidewalk.
And just kind of related to what you said, but a couple years ago, I wrote to the principal of, is it the principal? Yeah, of Upper Darby High School, because I use that intersection a lot, and I have a couple jobs, I'm in it sometimes midday. And students, more than once, will be crossing, and it's already red, and they stop and are having conversations, blocking traffic. I mean, I said, you should teach these students that they're in intersections. I mean, thank God none of them get hit, but they just lollygag in the middle of a red light. So that's not anything you can deal with. Maybe we
No,
should-
but
maybe we should put
someone
caps
will
on.
be, the vehicles will be dealing with that.
And so we should go put hats on, pretend like we're officials, and tell the students to move.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Yeah, just to tie some of this together, some of the comments, we talked about pedestrian circulation. One thing we talked about with the engineer was trying to provide another route to the building, because when you're coming down State Road, the fear is that people are just going to walk through the driveway, cut through the drive-through lane, and then walk around. So Wayne and I were discussing maybe some more dense landscape or maybe a fence to kind of deter people from cutting right through the parking lot off of the state roadside. Yeah, right there. Yep. And then we also talked about, providing that ADA accessible route. And then, and one thing I was thinking of as we're talking here, is you're mentioning about the students walking down the road or just letting out of school. Maybe at the intersection, if we widen that sidewalk up another couple feet, maybe it gives more room for people to stand on that corner, because that's where they kind of conglomerate when they're waiting to cross the street, instead of them having to kind of stand out in the street. But I do think removing those driveways are going to make a big difference as far as conflicts and allowing the kids having a place to stand, because you don't have to worry about a car kind of.
And the bus
Fucking
stop.
yeah.
Right, we can look at widening the sidewalk at the bus stop and the intersection.
Yeah.
We are kind of held back by a couple of the.
I know you have grades there and stuff,
Yes.
so, yeah. But it wouldn't affect the site triangle if the sidewalk even went back a few feet, just to give a little bit of area there.
Right,
But, yeah, just a thought, just hearing the comments tonight.
I think we can accomplish that.
So where is the pedestrian entrance to the building? Is it facing State or Lansdowne?
Facing Lansdowne.
No, I'm sorry, like the actual door.
Oh, this door is here. And one of our dilemmas in trying to get pedestrians off the State Road into the site is either crossing the drive-through up to the railing on the outdoor seating area. We had left, at one point, we had showed a crosswalk here and just weren't happy with the way it connected
All right.
and tried to push everybody back down. So that people are gonna walk where they walk no matter what we do for them. But as we discussed with the township consultants, we're going to look at trying to do another access further down on Lansdowne, maybe closer to the intersection, and see if we can bring some people in that way also.
Does anybody up here have any further questions?
Are we going to be able to see, because I'm curious about what the loading will look like. Or, well, let me ask this before. I don't know what type of loading Starbucks even requires. I don't know, do they typically use, the Mack trucks? Like, what kind of loading does a Starbucks franchise typically?
I'm not positive it's the area, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to get with the right people there. Unfortunately, our representative just switched positions there, so we had a little trouble catching back up to them.
Okay.
But I'm going to get the information from Starbucks, provide it back to your engineers so that we're on the same page and we know that it works for both parties.
And will we get to see this again before? No,
Do you guys have a recommendation for where you'd like to see it?
well, it's hard to make. I would want to see the loading, I would think.
Is there an artist rendering?
No, not as part of the land development. I don't think we had one at zoning, did we? I don't think they've gotten quite that far with it yet.
Well, isn't the loading the same thing that Wawa does now? They just, when it's not that busy, they just bring a big truck up and they go right to the front door.
But what do you mean big, like, looking at that side, what do you mean by big, bring a big truck
Like a
up?
35-foot
Because
truck
that-
or something. That's
the
what the
entrance
Starbucks near me
on-
does.
Right, but for this specific, I'm not sure what Wawa you're referring to, but just for this site, I'm having a hard time looking at this, trying to figure out like how it would even navigate, if
Well-
the trucks that I'm envisioning, I can't.
So it's
can't picture
general,
it
Also,
navigating this site.
There is an existing Starbucks right at the end on the other portion of the site right now. And that parking lot is essentially laid out the same way as this one will be.
and there are ordinance requirements relative to maximum and minimum sizes for a loading area if we have a designated loading area. So as part of the township engineer's review before a final approval, we would have to show that it fits on the site in the size that's required and that a truck can navigate it.
And we'll provide turning templates for the vehicle that they are using to show that it can navigate the site and not impact the remaining function of the site. Yes.
Okay.
Jennifer?
Yeah, if there's one member of the public, yes, one member of the public, who also happens to be the mayor.
So with the landscaping and the trees that you're putting in, is there a landscaping plan that where Starbucks will take care of it or take care of the
There is
the
one.
landscaping?
So
You mean ongoing maintenance of the landscaping? Yes.
yes, so as part of the land development agreements, and Sean Kilkenny's still your solicitor, right? I think so,
Yes.
Yeah. So as part of Sean's land development agreements, there are requirements in there relative to ongoing maintenance. So once we get a land development approval and we're showing landscaping associated with it, that's part of the approved plan. And it's then the either the property owner or the tenant's obligation to maintain that landscaping going forward. So we would have, or Starbucks would have, ongoing maintenance obligations. This is part of the bond. It's a little strange because this is actually part of the Bond Shopping Center. It's the same owner. So even though it's across the street, same folks that operate the majority of the Bond Center across the street will operate this as well. So the landscaping, I suspect, will look very much like the Bond landscaping across the street does, and we would have ongoing maintenance obligations related to it.
Okay, that's great. And are there any stormwater management improvements as part of this plan?
Yes.
Can
We're
you go
providing
through them a
another-
little bit?
We're going to provide an underground detention facility to decrease the water and meet the ordinance requirements for discharge. The only thing we did ask the waiver from is infiltrating water into the ground based on the previous gas station use.
Okay,
But the rate of runoff from the site will be less than it is currently.
okay, that's great. That's great news. What is the plan moving forward, just so Like, when would this go before council?
That's dependent on the recommendations.
Recommended this evening, that we would take the recommendation letter from the planning commission, give it to Sean Kilkenny's office, they would draft the resolution. I would see them in October, probably meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Is
Thank you.
the owner the applicant or is Starbucks?
The owner is the
The
applicant.
owner is the applicant.
And are they currently, trying to think of the last time I drove past there, the conditions of the site currently, is it currently gated up and all?
It is fenced off completely and gated. There's a lock gate there. The surface structures are all still there, and that's part of the DEP requirements. The tanks have been removed, the pumps have been removed.
Can I say one thing, Steve, about the loading and all? When you think about coffee shops, 80% of what leaves their building came through the spigot.
80% of what we use the building. I don't understand that. The water?
They're selling water flavored. So they bring the
Well-
flavor in, they add water to it.
I mean, I think then the answer would be like, we don't have much loading, but neither one of them said that, so there must be.
Well, and again,
So-
I think
so-
to be clear, I mean, there, as I said earlier, that this is not a heavy loading operation, even like you would expect at a Wawa, where they're getting multiple different types of deliveries throughout the day, all day, and they're dealing with gas in a lot of places as well. These are, my understanding is they tend to be smaller scale trucks, so box trucks and those kind of things. Does that mean that there's never a situation where there's a larger truck? No. I mean, I'm sure there certainly are deliveries that occur on larger volume trucks, but most of what they're getting are paper products and supplies related to that, some food deliveries and those types of things. So they tend to be smaller scale deliveries. I think part of what Starbucks does is they deliver more frequently instead of larger quantities at a time, right? Because these stores are not very large, so they don't
They don't have the
have
storage
a
volume.
huge storage area to store things in. So their delivery rates are based on that kind of a model where they're not holding a lot on site. So you're not getting big, truck full deliveries of, tractor trailers 2 and 3 times a day kind of thing. You're getting smaller trucks outside of prime hours. And that's, that's quite frankly when they can actually intake anyway, because they're otherwise turning water into coffee, right? So they're busy otherwise.
The other thing I will add, the initial design of this site came from Starbucks through their professionals, and we adapted it into the actual site conditions and made some minor changes. But they were happy with their stacking. They were happy with their delivery areas. They were happy with their parking. In fact, at one point, I think we lost 2 or 3 parking spaces, and they were worried about it. So they know their site, they know their operation. They have engineers on staff, they have designers on staff. They're pretty good with what they do.
They don't know up at Darby.
And I know people that work across the street
They don't know them
and the
kids.
Bond Shopping Center, the big one.
Right.
If the workers need a parking space, they can park over there because it's technically the same.
And that was one of our discussions with Starbucks.
They can park across the street and they won't get in trouble because it's the same entity.
Right.
Right.
Just one more comment. Just a quick comment on loading. The biggest thing is, we want to have a truck turning. Yeah, we want to have a truck turning template that shows that the truck can traverse the site. And they're not going to be loading out in a roadway or backing in from a roadway. So that's the whole idea of just having that on paper so we can see it works. And then that satisfies that
And
requirement.
if that were a condition of the approval or in the agreement,
No
there could be
objection.
no loading off the street, there's nobody that would blanket that.
Yeah, that's.
I wish we could petition the streets department to do a 4-way stop.
I think it would be PennDOT
because it's a And who would petition that?
I think that would be the township more than the,
Well, that would be more of a township question, operational standpoint of the traffic signals. Are there crossing guards out there typically at that
I've
time? No?
never seen a crossing
No,
guard.
There's not at that
Not
location?
that far from an elementary. There's no
No.
elementary within a half mile.
Yeah.
so no.
Police hang out there?
I feel like I've seen, yeah.
That's a,
You've seen what?
police will sometimes sit there,
Oh,
but that's.
Yeah, but they're sitting there for a different reason.
Yes.
The other thing that maybe not, I don't know if there's right turns permitted at that intersection or not.
right turns?
Right turns.
Yes.
That's where you get a lot of the pedestrian car
Yes.
conflicts crossing the road, is people
They-
making the right on red.
Right, and that is allowed there. I
From
thought it was.
Lansdowne to State?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay. Did
But
I
all
do
that
it,
will be-
did I do
believe-
it illiterate?
But all of that'll be in the traffic study. Right.
Yes.
Right, so as far as our traffic analysis to PennDOT goes, that intersection and the existing conditions and the traffic volumes through there and all of that gets looked at by PennDOT. Now, whether PennDOT will elect to do something or not, independent of a push from the township, I don't know. But certainly independent of this project, I mean, whether this project was moving forward or not, I think the township always has the ability to go to PennDOT and say, we've got a problem at this intersection and we want to
It
look at
might
a
be something
four-way.
for us to consider.
Is the committee ready to make a motion? Does anybody have one crafted? I have one sort of. I can-
Yeah, I mean, I don't have one crafted, but I would make a motion that we recommend approval pending probably, well, everything that you have, but I would just like to add that there is a circulation map for loading presented before final approval.
Okay, so I have that we recommend approval, including the 4 waivers, to also include the loading area diagram. And also I had included that the widened sidewalks at the corner as can be accommodated.
Okay.
So sidewalks, waivers, loading area. And then it sounds like the traffic study takes care of itself, so we don't need to add that to the, so,
Yeah, that's pre-reviewed by PennDOT
Right.
work with PennDOT.
right. So as a committee, we would recommend approval of the project as presented, including its 4 waivers, with the addition of some widened sidewalks on the corner as can be accommodated, and documentation for the loading area analysis and accommodations thereof. Motion, so someone else may make the motion? Steve made the motion, a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye. All right,
Great, thank you very much,
Thank
everybody.
Thank you.
thank you, I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, I did. I'm sorry. I did, but late, but yes.
So we have no further plans to be presented this evening. And as of now, we have no old business. Cassandra, would you like to propose what you were just talking about as potentially new business?
Oh, to petition
Or
PennDOT?
to get, yeah, to see
I
what
would
that's
love
all
that.
about?
I would love to
talk about-
petition PennDOT
Okay,
to look
to
at that
the pedestrian
intersection.
crossings at that intersection, whether a 4-stop is.
Yeah. I mean, is that
Because-
something we have any kind of,
I think as a planning
ability to-
commission, we
to
could
request?
suggest the township look into it.
Yeah, I think we could send a request to PennDOT Safe Traffic Unit and have them take a look at it.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I would say we could have it come from us, right? We could have it come from us as a planning commission. That might be a nice thing for us to do as our, one of the first reaching out to a third party, another planning-ish body.
yeah.
I'm not all happy with that because I have only been to those intersections a couple times in my life out in the Midwest, and it really slows down traffic a lot, significantly midday, so.
And, right,
Well,
and they would
but
make that
couldn't
decision.
couldn't that also be timed for it to be peak hours of when school and,
And that's when
and
traffic
there-
is peak too. Traffic is peak when it's peak hours.
but,
so,
but that's when it's needed.
the students need to learn road walking etiquette.
Okay. I know you think that that's possible.
Trust me, It's,
But I've seen people get hit at that
okay, then you can
intersection.
research it and then you can come up with a plan. You said you don't have the etiquette?
I still don't have walking etiquette.
Well, then you can come up with a plan.
Well, let's put it on as something maybe we can continue to discuss, find out a little, maybe I can find a little info before the next meeting and, I mean, and it's still, it would not, it is a state road, so it wouldn't be our decision anyway. It's simply asking them to look at it. If
Right.
PennDOT felt it was going to stack the traffic too far, they'd say no.
Right, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Just, we asked them to do different studies for speed humps and this, that, and the other, and we don't always get what we want. Like, our intent isn't really sometimes what they come up with or they agree with. So, but ask, I think, why not?
Yeah.
I think that would be great.
I mean, just to look at it might elicit some other suggestions that might be more workable. But, you know, like I said, I've seen people get hit there. And it's, if you want to talk about what's holding up traffic, when you see somebody laying in the road, that really holds up the traffic.
Okay, so any other new business? Anybody have anything they'd like to bring up or add to the agenda for next time?
Nope.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
A second.
Okay, thank you, everyone.